40 million people watched her sing one song. Judges called her voice liquid gold. She became a viral sensation overnight. But then, something strange happened. The woman with the voice that made Amanda Holden cry simply vanished. No albums. No tours. No social media. She just disappeared. For over a decade, people have wondered, what happened to Alice Fredenham? Why would someone walk away from everything after tasting fame? Today we're uncovering the truth behind one of reality TV's biggest mysteries. Before Alice Fredenham became a name whispered across the internet, she was just another person with a dream and a fear. She lived in Harpenden, a quiet town in Hertfordshire. She wasn't a trained performer. She had no connections in the music industry. She didn't go to elite conservatories or study under famous teachers. She was 28 years old, working as a beauty therapist, waxing eyebrows and applying facials to earn a living. But there was something else about Alice. Something secret. She loved music. Not in a casual way. She loved the golden age of jazz. Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald. These weren't songs for her to sing at karaoke. They were personal. They were sacred. She would listen to them alone, maybe sing in private, but the idea of performing in front of strangers? That terrified her. Alice suffered from severe stage fright. The kind that made her hands shake. The kind that convinced her she would fail. So she kept it to herself. She didn't tell her family. She didn't tell her friends at work. Nobody knew she harbored this hunger to perform. Then came 2012. The Voice UK was holding auditions. Something inside Alice pushed her to apply. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was desperation. She auditioned with The Lady is a Tramp, a Tony Bennett classic. She sang her heart out. But when the audition ended, none of the judges turned their chairs. Not Danny Odenag. Not Tom Jones. Not will.i.am. Not Jessie J. 4 judges. 4 rejections. The performance wasn't even broadcast. Here's what makes this moment crucial. Alice almost quit right then. 4 months afterward, she convinced herself she'd made a mistake. The judges had confirmed what she secretly believed, that she wasn't good enough. That maybe her fear was justified. But something wouldn't let her stop. 6 months passed. Alice carried the rejection quietly. She went to work. She did her job. She sang alone. But the dream didn't die, it just waited. In early 2013, Britain's Got Talent announced auditions. Alice was terrified. She had just been rejected by The Voice. Why would this be different? But there was a difference and she felt it. BGT wasn't just for singers. It was for anyone with talent. Maybe she thought a jazz singer had a better shot here. Maybe the judges would understand what she was trying to do. She didn't tell anyone. Not her family. Not her friends. She made a conscious decision to keep it secret. She failed again, nobody would know. Nobody would judge her. She could just disappear back into her normal life. On the day of her audition, Alice walked onto that stage wearing a simple black dress. Her hands were visibly shaking. You could see the terror in her eyes. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. Then she opened her mouth. The first notes of My Funny Valentine hung in the air like perfume. Her voice was low. It was sultry. It was hypnotic. The entire room fell silent. Judges stopped writing notes. The audience stopped breathing. It was the kind of moment where time feels different, where everything else disappears and only the voice remains. Within seconds, something shifted. This wasn't a nervous beauty therapist anymore. This was a woman channeling decades of longing through a single performance. Every note carried weight. Every word carried emotion. When she finished, there was a pause. Then the room erupted. Amanda Holden had tears streaming down her face. Simon Cowell, the man famous for destroying dreams, leaned back and said her voice sounded like liquid gold. David Walliams called her a goddess. Alicia Dixon praised her beauty and confidence. For yes, standing ovation. Within hours, the clip went viral. Within days, it had millions of views. Within weeks, 40 million people had watched Alice Fredenham sing one song. But here's what nobody realized in that moment. This was the peak. Everything that followed would be a slow descent. The internet exploded with Alice's name. News outlets ran stories. Social media users obsessed over her. People created fan accounts. They analyzed every second of her performance. They debated whether she was nervous or confident. They wondered about her backstory. They demanded to know everything about the mysterious woman with the golden voice. But something else was happening behind the scenes, something darker. Within days of her BGT audition going viral, a story emerged. Reporters discovered that Alice had auditioned for The Voice UK just months earlier. The same Alice. The same voice. But the voice had rejected her completely. Not a single judge turned their chair. This created a scandal. Media outlets framed it as a mystery. How could every judge on The Voice pass on Alice Fredenham, yet every judge on BGT give her standing ovations? Which show had it right? Which judges were wrong? Was Alice genuine, or was there something manipulative about her performance? A BGT spokesperson issued a statement. "We didn't even know she had auditioned for The Voice when she appeared on our show." But the damage was done. The internet doesn't forget contradictions. The internet weaponizes them. People started asking uncomfortable questions. Was her stage fright real, or was it an act designed to win sympathy? Did she perform differently on different shows? Some accused her of strategic manipulation, of playing a character rather than being authentic. The narrative shifted. What had been pure admiration transformed into suspicion. This is the moment everything began to unravel, though nobody knew it yet. Alice was riding the highest wave of her life. She had advanced through BGT rounds. She was being called one of the season's standout vocalists. Record labels were interested. The music industry was knocking on her door. Everything she had dreamed of seemed possible. Yet simultaneously the public was turning on her. The very people who had celebrated her were now questioning her motives. The praise and criticism were arriving at the same time, creating a psychological whiplash that most people can't survive. Alice had to make a choice: lean into the fame or step back. She had to decide whether she could handle being scrutinized, analyzed, dissected by millions of strangers who felt entitled to judge not just her voice, but her character, her authenticity, her every decision. The weight of that choice was about to change the entire trajectory of her life. Alice continued through BGT. She made it to the semifinals. The show's producers saw her as a potential winner. She was marketable. She had the backstory. She had the voice. She had the vulnerability that audiences connected with. On paper she was perfect. But in the semifinal, something went wrong. She performed "Cry Me a River" by Justin Timberlake. It was a different song, a different arrangement, a different energy. And there was a slight mistake in her performance. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that would destroy a lesser singer. But for someone being watched by millions, carrying the weight of 40 million YouTube views, even a small imperfection felt like failure. The judges praised her anyway. Alicia Dixon told her she needed to believe in herself more. Simon Cowell said there was a real place in the market for artists like you. These should have been encouraging words. These should have been the validation she needed. Instead, they were a warning sign. Because here's what happens after reality TV puts you on a pedestal. The fall becomes inevitable. The industry moved fast. Record labels wanted to sign her. There were discussions about albums, tours, appearances. The machinery of the music business started grinding, and Alice was caught in the middle of it. She released her album, Under the Covers. It was a collection of jazz standards, the songs she loved. Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald. The music that had sustained her through years of doubt and fear. Her voice on these recordings was stunning, pure, unfiltered. But something was missing: promotion. There was no tour announcement. There were no major media appearances. There were no interviews where she discussed her journey. The album existed, but it felt like a ghost. It was released and then, nothing. It was available on Spotify and Apple Music, but without the marketing machine behind it, without the relentless push that the industry demands, it disappeared into the void. People who loved her voice couldn't find new music from her. The momentum that had carried her to the semi-finals of Britain's Got Talent simply evaporated. Around the same time, rumors began circulating. People said she was dating someone in the music industry. A member of the electronic music duo Sigma, named Joe Lenzi. The rumors were true. While the public was demanding more from Alice, more performances, more albums, more of herself, she was building a private life away from the cameras. This is where the real story gets complicated. Because Alice had to choose between two versions of herself. The public Alice that 40 million people had fallen in love with, and the private Alice who wanted peace, love, and anonymity. The industry couldn't understand why she wasn't capitalizing on her fame. Why wasn't she touring? Why wasn't she doing interviews? Why was she pulling back just when she should have been pushing forward? But Alice was learning something crucial. Viral fame and artistic fulfillment are not the same thing. By 2014 and 2015, Alice Fredenham had become a ghost in the machine. Her album existed, but she didn't. She wasn't on social media promoting it. She wasn't doing press tours. She wasn't performing at festivals or venues. The woman who had captivated 40 million people with a single performance had essentially vanished from public view. And then something unexpected happened. The internet forgot about her. Not entirely, but enough. Her BGT audition video remained online, a permanent record of her moment. People would occasionally stumble upon it and share it, amazed that they'd never heard of her. But there was no new content. There was no Alice Fredenham news cycle. She had become a ghost haunting YouTube, a viral moment frozen in time. For most people, this would have felt like failure. For Alice, it might have felt like freedom. In 2024, years after her BGT appearance, something curious happened. A single titled Air appeared on streaming platforms. It was credited to Alice Fredenham. But there was no announcement, no press release, no social media post, no interviews accompanying it. The song just existed. This tells us something profound about Alice's relationship with music and fame. She still made music. She still created. But she had completely rejected the apparatus that comes with being a public figure. No promotion meant no pressure. No interviews meant no scrutiny. No social media meant no judgment from strangers. This was a radical act in an era obsessed with personal branding. Most artists who achieve viral success are told one thing: strike while the iron is hot. Capitalize. Build your brand. Stay relevant. Feed the machine. The machine demands constant content, constant visibility, constant proof that you deserve the attention you've been given. Alice refused. Her former record label, Cherry Red Records, eventually issued an official statement. They confirmed what many had suspected. Alice had essentially retired from the music industry. She wanted her privacy. She was done with the public life. The statement was brief, matter-of-fact, and final. But here's what makes this so remarkable. Her legacy didn't diminish because she stepped away. If anything, it deepened. People who watched her BGT audition in 2013 still talk about it in 2026. They comment on the YouTube video saying her voice helped them through dark times. They share the performance with friends who've never heard of her, and those friends are mesmerized. The clip has become timeless, not because of marketing or strategy but because it captured something authentic and real. Alice's album, Under the Covers, remains available on streaming platforms. People discover it years later, often by accident. They listen to her voice, sultry, sophisticated, vulnerable, and they wonder who she is and why she isn't famous. The irony is stunning. By rejecting fame, Alice achieved something more valuable than fame itself. She achieved genuine artistic respect. While the world was obsessing over Alice Fredenham's voice and career trajectory, something quietly beautiful was happening in her private life. She had found love. Joe Lindsay is a member of Sigma, an electronic music duo that had achieved significant success in the UK music scene. He was established in the industry. He understood the pressures of performance and public attention. He knew what it meant to be in the spotlight, and more importantly, he knew what it meant to step away from it. When Alice and Joe got together, it wasn't a media event. There were no red carpet appearances. There were no Instagram posts declaring their relationship to the world. It was simply two people, both connected to music but both aware of its costs, finding companionship away from the cameras. This relationship became the anchor that allowed Alice to make her most important decision. Because here's what the public doesn't understand about fame: it's isolating. When you're viral, when millions of people know your face and voice, you become a commodity rather than a person. People feel entitled to your time, your energy, your emotional labor. They believe they own a piece of you because they watched your video. They think they understand you because they've seen you perform. Alice experienced this firsthand. After her BGT audition went viral, she couldn't walk down the street without being recognized. People approached her. They demanded selfies. They told her what her voice meant to them. They interrogated her about why she wasn't capitalizing on her fame. They felt betrayed when she didn't become the superstar they believed she should be. With Joe, she found someone who didn't need her to be famous. He didn't need her to feed the machine or build a brand or prove herself constantly. He loved her as a person, not as a viral moment. This is where the real transformation began. Alice started making choices based on what made her happy, not what would satisfy the public's appetite for content. She stopped doing interviews. She stopped posting on social media. She stopped promoting her music. These weren't failures or signs of depression or burnout, though the internet would later speculate about all of these things. They were deliberate choices made by a woman who had learned something crucial: the price of fame wasn't worth the reward. Around 2024, sources close to Alice revealed something that explained everything. While she still loved music, genuinely loved it, the industry part of it had become unbearable. The cameras. The judgments. The constant demand to be on. The expectation that she owed something to the millions of people who had watched her sing one song. She had discovered that you could love your art without loving the machinery that surrounds it. And with Joe beside her, she had the courage to walk away from that machinery entirely. She could still make music for herself, for people she loved, for the pure joy of creating. But she didn't have to perform for strangers anymore. She didn't have to maintain an image. She didn't have to be Alice Fredenham, BGT star. She could just be Alice. This is the part of her story that most people miss. They see her disappearance as tragedy or waste. But from her perspective, it was liberation. By the mid-2020s, Alice Fredenham had made a choice that would have seemed unthinkable to most people in her position. She had chosen obscurity over fame, privacy over publicity, a quiet life over a public one. This wasn't a sudden decision. It was gradual. It was intentional. It was built on years of learning what fame actually cost. She stopped updating her social media accounts. Her Facebook page, which once featured updates about performances and career news, became static. No new posts. No engagement with fans. Just a digital monument to who she used to be in the public eye. For someone who had built a career on connecting with audiences, this silence was deafening, but it was also peaceful. She removed herself from the music industry's machinery. No agent constantly pushing her toward the next opportunity. No record label demanding new material with specific commercial appeal. No producers telling her what songs would chart or what style would sell. She was free from all of it. The curious thing is that this choice didn't feel like failure to Alice. It felt like success. Because she had learned what most viral stars never learn. That one perfect moment doesn't obligate you to repeat it forever. That going viral doesn't mean you owe the world a career. That being talented doesn't mean you have to monetize that talent. That you can love something, truly love it, without turning it into a job. When people discovered the single Air on streaming platforms in 2024, it was a surprise. There was no announcement. No marketing campaign. No press release explaining where she'd been or what she'd been doing. The song simply existed, like a gift left anonymously on a doorstep. It was her choice to release it on her own terms, without the apparatus of the industry surrounding it. Some people interpreted her silence as tragedy. They created conspiracy theories. They wondered if she was depressed, if something bad had happened, if she'd been forced to quit. The internet filled the void of her absence with speculation and drama because that's what the internet does. It can't accept that someone would voluntarily step away from fame. It needs a narrative of suffering or sabotage. But the truth was simpler and more powerful. Alice had simply decided that her life was more important than her career. She was building something real. A relationship with Joe. A life away from scrutiny. The freedom to sing only when she wanted to sing. The ability to wake up in the morning and not be Alice Fredenham, the BGT girl. Just Alice. Just a woman who loved jazz standards and had found peace. This was the most radical thing a viral star could do in an age of constant personal branding. Everyone told her she was wasting her talent. Everyone said she was throwing away opportunities. Everyone insisted that her moment would pass and she'd regret not capitalizing on it. But Alice understood something they didn't. Moments don't define you unless you let them. Her BGT audition will forever exist on the internet. 40 million people have watched it. It will continue to get views decades from now. People will discover it and be moved by it. And Alice doesn't have to do anything else to justify its existence. The performance stands on its own. By choosing to disappear, Alice actually preserved something precious, the purity of that moment. It wasn't diluted by subsequent failures or compromises. It wasn't tainted by desperate attempts to relive the glory. It simply existed as a perfect artifact of a woman singing her heart out at exactly the right time in her life. In stepping away, she became more legendary than she would have been by staying. As of 2026, Alice Fredenham is living a life that most people will never know about. And that's exactly how she wants it. She's still with Joe. They've built a life together away from the spotlight. No red carpet events. No celebrity gossip columns speculating about their relationship. Just two people who understand the music industry's pressures, supporting each other through the quiet years. Does she still sing? The evidence suggests yes. That single Air proved she hasn't abandoned music entirely. But she sings on her own terms now. Not for contracts or chart positions or record labels. Not to satisfy public demand or prove something to the judges who rejected her or the internet that obsessed over her. She sings because she loves to sing. Her contact information, alicefredenham@gmail.com, remains listed for press and bookings. But there are almost no requests anymore. The machinery has moved on. There are new viral stars, new BGT moments, new internet sensations. Alice is old news, which means she's finally free. Here's what makes her story so different from other reality TV contestants. Most people who taste viral fame spend the rest of their lives chasing that high. They desperately try to recreate the magic. They become trapped in cycles of attempting comebacks. They age poorly in the public eye because they're constantly trying to stay relevant to an audience that has already moved on. Alice did the opposite. She walked away while people still loved her. She stepped back while she was still on top. She chose to be remembered for one perfect performance rather than a dozen mediocre ones. Her YouTube video remains. Every day people discover it. Every week, comments pour in from strangers telling her that her voice changed their lives. That it helped them through dark times. That it reminded them why music matters. These comments come from people who don't know her, who will never meet her, who have no connection to her life. Yet her voice touched them anyway. This is her legacy now. Not album sales or tour dates or chart positions. Not awards or accolades or industry recognition. But the simple fact that she made something beautiful, shared it with the world, and then had the courage to walk away. In 2026, 13 years after her BGT audition, people still ask, whatever happened to Alice Fredenham? The question persists because her disappearance defies our modern understanding of success. We live in an age where visibility equals value. Where staying relevant is the ultimate goal. Where stepping away is seen as failure. But Alice understood something deeper. She understood that you don't have to be famous to be fulfilled. That you don't have to be in the spotlight to matter. That you can touch millions of hearts with a single performance and then choose a quiet life without it being a tragedy. The real story isn't what happened to Alice Fredenham after BGT. The real story is that she chose her own ending. In an industry built on exploiting talent and chasing the next viral moment, she refused to play the game. She took her shot. She gave the world a beautiful gift. And then she walked away on her own terms. In a world obsessed with fame, that might be the most famous thing she ever did. Her voice still echoes across the internet. Her name still appears in articles about BGT's greatest moments. Her audition video still gets shared by people amazed that someone so talented isn't a household name. 13 years later, her performance remains one of the most replayed moments in the show's history. And somewhere in Hertfordshire, Alice is living a life we'll never fully understand. She's singing when she wants to sing. She's loving who she wants to love. She's free from the burden of being someone the world believes it owns. That's not a tragedy. That's a victory.